date, but its higher resolution counterpart is missing. But for our application, we wish to have a higher resolution image on this date. Then how to do that? We can perform spatial temporal satellite image fusion to predict the missing one. And in this way, we can have the satellite imagery in both higher spatial resolution and temporal resolution to facilitate the monitoring of frequently changing phenomena on the Earth's surface or for monitoring the environment. So this is a result we generated 10 years ago, and it roughly captures both the physiological change or seasonal change and the land use, land cover change. Yeah, this result is okay. But then we continue to make improvement. And now we can generate a very good result. And this is a fused satellite image in higher spatial resolution. And the right one is the actual one. If you compare them, you can only find a very slight difference. And such fused image can be used directly to retrieve environmental parameters or perform land use, land cover classification. And this is another data set. And from T1 to T2, you can find a drastic change. And it's a very challenging data set to do satellite image fusion. And somehow we managed to overcome the problem. And this is a predicted one. And this is the right one, is the actual one. And they are pretty similar now. Okay, so here, the left column is the MODIS land surface temperature product. Clearly, they are in low resolution. If you want to study the effect of urban heat island at the straight block level, it's just impossible because resolution is too low. But after we perform spatial temporal image fusion, you can see we have generated their high resolution counterparts. Then we will be able to study the urban heat island effect at fine scales. So here you can see the value of spatial temporal image fusion. And here is another example, but for monitoring air pollution, and this is a fused product, just a minute, and which combines the strengths of fine scales of the 3 km AOD aerosol optical depth product and the good coverage of 10 km product using the spatial temporal image fusion method. And sometimes when we need to account for environmental objectives, yeah, we may need to use such data. Okay, so the above is about the generation of long and dense time series data. Then using such data, we can detect the change and model the spatial change. Then understand the complex spatial temporal change process, identifying the driving factors underlying the change, exploring the relative importance of the driving factors, and predicting future land use distribution given different development scenarios. And the model we developed for implementing that process is a so-called spatial logistic regression model, and it can account for the spatial temporal autocorrelation existing in the samples. So here, at least a set of explanatory variables, including the site-specific variables like density of population, population density, slope, zoning, proximity factors such as distance to commercial center, distance to residential center, distance to roads, also neighborhood characteristic factors. And we have implemented this model into our ArcGIS add-in to facilitate the use of spatial logical model. And it takes 6 steps to make spatial prediction and forecast of future land use distribution. And let me use a simple example to walk you through the application of the change analyst model and software. And the first step is that user need to input time series land use land cover data. And here it happens to be just 2 snapshots. And second step is to scan of the changes, and user can tick the changes of his or her interest to do further analysis. Then next step is to input the possible parameters, factors which may affect the change. And each factor in GIS is represented as a raster layer. Then we perform spatial sampling, either random sampling or balanced sampling. Yeah, then we conduct logistic regression to do training. And after that, we testing the model. So if the testing accuracy and the modeling accuracy are quite similar, then we can proceed confidently to the next step, that's spatial prediction or forecast of future land use distribution by specifying the development scenario. Here, user can also specify the land use structure. So here is the prediction result for land use of Shenzhen in 2004. That's quite a number of years ago. This is the actual one. You can find the overall accuracy is 85%. That's for multiple land use categories, so the accuracy is quite good. So the prediction of land use provide an opportunity to study the impact of urbanization on the environment or climate. And here is an application we did in Beijing, Hebei, Tianjin region. And we got 2 land use maps. One is in 1980s, the other in 2005. So after identifying a set of driving factors, their percentage of surrounding urban area, the distance to existing urban area, distance to roads, population distribution, and slope. Then we can use change analyst I just talked about to predict the future land use in 2050. So after this, we can apply weather research forecast to simulate the impact of urbanized land on land surface temperature. And the use of WRF require very detailed classification of land cover. So it has so many categories, and we normally classify using remote sensing data. So here is the result after the WRF simulation. So the up row is the daily mean, daily maximum, and the daily minimum. And this column is for 1980s, and this one for 2005, and this one for the forecasted land surface temperature in 2050. So from left to right, you can see the increase of daily mean land surface temperature, daily maximum, or daily minimum, and based on which we can make an adjustment in the planning process to mitigate the warming effect. Okay, so with the above 2 steps completed, then we can link the objective with spatial optimization through spatial temporal regression modeling. And the model we use is the geographic and temporally weighted regression that was devised by ourselves. And different from the conventional multivariate linear regression model, GTW can account for both the spatial non-stationarity and the temporal non-stationarity. Because you can see here, the coefficient here can vary over both space represented by UV and time represented by t coordinate here, and GTW combine spatial distance and temporal distance into a combined distance so that it can account for both the spatial heterogeneity and temporal heterogeneity. So it's a local spatial temporal model. And we have provided the GTW add-in in my ResearchGate webpage, and it can be downloaded for free use. This one is particular for a small data set. And later on, we were commissioned by the giant company in China to create a big data version of GTWR. And now it has been used frequently in this company to support their numerous smart city projects. They use it to predict telecom flow, transportation flow, mobility, etc. And it can incorporate at least 1 million spatial temporal data points. So here is an application we did to estimate land surface temperature in Hong Kong using GTWR. So you will know why we need to use GTWR here. So here is the distribution of sample points over entire Hong Kong on different land use categories. So as I mentioned earlier, satellite imagery has many problems. So some parts of this image is contaminated by clouds. And you can see the skyline failure problem. So theoretical here, we should get 8 spatial temporal data points. But in fact, due to skyline failure and also the cloud contamination problem, we can only get 5 spatial temporal data points. So if we look at this figure, we can find that usually in the summertime, we have a lot of missing data points. And in winter, we can have more points that can be extracted from the satellite image when we retrieve a land surface temperature. But such an unbalanced data set is not a problem to GTWR. So GTWR can process either unbalanced or balanced time series data. So that's the strength of GTWR. So here is a list of factors we consider in the regression model, such as elevation, sky view factor, floor area ratio that may affect land surface temperature. And we produced 4 data sets. One is all the spatial temporal data points representing land surface temperature that can be extracted from the whole year images in 2012, in 2011, and all the data points for all the winters that can be extracted for the imagery available during the period from 2002 to 2012, and for all the summers from 2002 to 2012. Yeah, then we can fit a model. So here we compare the performance of GTWR with GWR. You can see over all the data sets, GTWR achieve better performance because it accounts for both temporal non-stationarity as well as spatial temporal non-stationarity. But GWR only accounts for spatial non-stationarity. And here is another example for estimating PM 2.5 concentration at any location in China. So here is a set of explanatory variables like aerosol optical depth retrieved from satellite image, digital elevation model meteorological data such as humidity, temperature, wind speed, etc., and also the NDVI. And we can incorporate all the parameters into GTWR to perform estimation. And here is a result of GTWR. You can see it reveals more details than the result generated by spatial temporal interpolation. Actually, there are a lot of errors in the interpolation result, especially on the provincial boundaries. And here is a comparison of the performance of GTWR over two other spatial temporal regression models. One is the daily GWR, and the other is two-stage model. So daily GWR means if the data, especially the satellite data, is available on that day, then we fit a GWR model. And with many GWR models available, then it looks like it's time series GWR models. So it's called spatial temporal models. But actually, the spatial dimension and temporal dimension are separately treated. So in the two-stage model, we fit a linear regression model temporally. Then with the residual, we fit a GWR model. So in this model, actually, the spatial dimension and the temporal dimension are also separately processed. And only in GTWR, the spatial dimension and the spatial dimension and temporal dimension are processed simultaneously. And that's why it can achieve better performance in both the training accuracy and also the testing accuracy. Also in terms of the number of days that it can derive PM 2.5 concentration, it also fares the best. So because we want to estimate population exposure to PM 2.5, so we also use big data to estimate the dynamic distribution of population. And we use nighttime light satellite imagery, Tencent check-in data, and also Sino-Weibo data to estimate dynamic population distribution. And here is our result using Tencent data because it can provide the best estimation of dynamic population. And the distribution of population here, it looks more reasonable than other population products. So with the dynamic air pollution and population data available, then we can easily calculate the dynamic population exposure to PM 2.5 for all prefecture level cities in China. So you can see the exposure vary over both space and time. And we can also take account of this objective in our spatial planning process. Okay, then we come to the last step, a multi-objective optimization for sustainable spatial planning. And different from the traditional spatial planning process, our method can conduct the development and evaluation of land use plans simultaneously. Because in the traditional method, we develop the plan first, then we perform evaluation of the plan on the environment and the climate. But actually in our method, we evaluate each plan against the objective, then select a better set and evolve the solution to get the optimal one. So eventually the development and evaluation can be conducted simultaneously. And our method takes several steps. The first step is to identify the objectives. Second, identify the constraints for development. Then perform optimization. And finally, conduct a result analysis. And we select the objective from the economic, social, and environmental domains. And here is a set of specific objectives like maximization of GDP, minimization of energy consumption, maximization of compactness, land use compatibility, ecological service, accessibility, workability, etc. So as long as the objective can be quantified, then it can be incorporated into our spatial optimization model. And we can even account for land suitability and land carrying capacity. So that can be treated as objective or constraints. And eventually we can derive the so-called long-term related solution or Pareto optimal solution, which make a compromise between the objectives. And the compromise solutions are taken as optimal solutions in our case. And here is our land use plan. And the sales value indicate our land use category. So our land use plan is represented as a chromosome in a genetic algorithm. And we perform crossover and mutation operation to evolve an optimal set of solutions. Okay, so let me introduce to you two applications we conducted in Shenzhen using our spatial optimization approach. The first is climate conscious spatial planning for Shenzhen, which works actually primarily done by Yulen. So the objectives include minimization of land surface temperature, so minimization of cost of change, which means so keeping the current land use as much as possible. So if there is a change, then it will incur a cost. The third objective is maximization of land use compatibility, but the optimization is under the condition that it shouldn't reduce the total amount of urban growth. So a certain amount of urban growth still should be ensured. And the data used was not very much, just 3 layers. The MODIS Landsat derived land surface temperature, the urban land use map of Shenzhen in 2015, and the digital elevation model. Then we can establish the relationship between land surface temperature and different land use categories. So after that, we perform genetic algorithm evaluation, and eventually we can produce such a optimal plan. So you can see here the urban built-up areas are now more evenly distributed in Shenzhen. And after the optimization, the new developed areas and the redevelopment areas have a better composition of in terms of building densities. And here you can see, so after optimization, the increase in land surface temperature is 0.14, which is lower compared to 0.21 degrees centigrade without optimization. Okay, so the decrease in the increase of land surface temperature is 0.07 for the daytime, and for the nighttime is 0.03 degrees centigrade. So this indicates the value of spatial optimization, and this is applicable to large areas in Shenzhen. So the improvement is quite significant. Okay, so another application is about ecological planning for Shenzhen. And clearly, we should account for a set of objectives. And the first set is related to ecosystem security. And particularly, we choose the soil conservation objective, habitat quality objective, and collectivity objective. And another set is related to urban development. And this one actually related to the maximization of GDP. This one is about incompatibility of land use. And third set is related to the change cost. And we try to minimize the change to keep the land use status quo as much as possible. Then each object should be evaluated. So for the soil conservation objective, we use the classical revised universal soil loss equation. So here all the variables can be provided and evaluated using the GIS data. And second objective is habitat quality, which is related to the interference of eco patches to the threatening sources, like industrial land, commercial land, and in terms of the proximity to the threatening sources, and also the sensitivity to the interference. And next objective is connectivity. And we evaluate the probability of connectivity in terms of the distance between the patches. If the distance is short, then probability of connectivity is higher, otherwise lower. So then the maximization of GDP is based on the average GDP output at every land use category. And incompatibility is based on a pre-specified land use compatibility metrics. And this one is related to the change cost. So after specifying the objective, we still need to specify the quantitative constraints and spatial constraints, because some land use cannot be changed. Also, the built-up area has a limit is specified by the government each year. Okay, then we need to specify the fitness function. And very commonly we use a max-min method. It has been used by us for a long time. So here, this fitness function is a combination of multiple objectives. And P here can speed up the convergence of the genetic model. And this is a result, which shows the convergence trend of different objectives. And this objective specifies the increase of the GDP output. So at the reduction of the ecological loss. Actually, this is a result we want to get. And these are two optimal land use plans mapped out. And this is a land use map. We start to make optimization. And you can see the rectangular areas highlight the conversion of cultivated land to built-up area, and circular area highlights the conversion of ecological land to built-up areas. And in general, the optimized plans have similar spatial patterns. So the improved ecological land areas are mostly in the current ecological regions, and some small patches are in the current built-up areas. And the newly generated ecological areas are in some reclamation areas, this one, and Yeah, this one. And the increased built-up land area are most distributed alongside current built-up regions, and newly generated built-up areas are in some reclamation areas. Yeah, the result is pretty reasonable, just as we thought about. Okay, in summary, I have presented a framework for sustainable spatial planning, and the framework is extensible to account for more objectives like carbon emission, carbon source, as long as the objective can be quantified and well incorporated into our model. And the use of computer tools aims to facilitate the plan development process. But the computer tools cannot replace human experts. Nevertheless, they provide the rigorous draft plans, based on which planners just need to make slight adjustment. So central to spatial planning is the production of physical space required for economic and social development. But this is still not enough. The computer tools should be combined with policy tools to make the physical plans more effective. So for future work, I realize that the optimization algorithm can still be improved, and we should account for the objective like social equity. But it's a challenge to account for such a social objective. Probably we need to use big data. And the economic objectives such as urban agglomeration effect should be carefully stressed. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Huang. There's certainly a lot of materials in your presentation. So thank you for the efforts for preparing the presentation. It's very interesting. Okay, now the floor is open to participants for any comments or questions. And I think because it's, we have more than 80 people joining the seminar, so I think the easiest is if you can put your question into the chat room, then because I won't be able to see you all in one go. Now, here we have already got some questions. So yes, maybe Professor Huang, can you look at the questions in the chat room?
Okay, so the first question is, have you compared the optimized plan with some other sustainable cities in the world? Actually, we haven't done that, but we have developed a validation method to show that our optimized plan is better than the human-made plan or existing land use in terms of the various objective values.
Thank you. And then there's another question there. There are different scenarios in the prediction.
Okay. Yeah, there are different scenarios in the prediction. You mean in land use change modeling?
So,
I think so, yes. Yeah, so actually user can specify different development scenarios because we use the previous land use change data. So I can let the user choose whether the future growth will be according to a particular period, for example, from 1985 to 1995, or from 1995 to 2015, etc. That's one scenario. So actually, I rank the historical land use change, growth rate into several levels, and user can choose whether they prefer the higher growth or medium growth or low growth. So this serves as the scenarios. Yeah, of course, I also specify some constraints. For example, the increase of the urban area cannot be 100%, right? It must be below 80% or in terms of data specified by the municipal government.
Right. Thank you. Any more questions? We still have about 10 minutes. Oh, yes. It's a big question there. Professor Huang, can you read the question in the chat room?
Okay. So from
it's from
I wonder, What is, from Bing Chen.
Yes.
I wonder what is the biggest challenge for leveraging these satellite observations and spatial temporal models into specific practice of planning and design, especially for addressing the multi-scale effects. Sorry, let me read it again. Biggest challenge for leveraging this satellite. So the biggest challenge is to reconstruct the data as accurately as possible, because otherwise people won't trust your fused data. But if it's as accurate as the original data, then people will have more confidence on the data you generate. But for planning practice, so as I illustrated, for example, we can use the fused data to derive land surface temperature in both higher spatial resolution and temporal resolution. Then we can study the impact of urbanization on urban heat islands in higher resolution and continuous manner. Of course, we can account for more factors, like air pollution, water pollution, etc. As long as you can quantify these objectives and incorporate them into your optimization model. Of course, another challenge is to derive the very high resolution satellite data. We just started to work on that. And also, whether the model can accommodate the huge volumes of data. And in fact, recently we make a breakthrough on that aspect. We can handle a very large volume of data, even for entire Tibet Plateau. We can create the fused Landsat data. That's a very big area.
Thank you. Any further question? Oh, yes, that's another one.
How would the prediction reflect southern policy change, such as moving all chemical industry out of Beijing, Tianjin to Chaofeidian? It's a very good question. So it means in your model, you must account for such effects. Then you can, apply the model to the new phenomena or new policy. So then it depends on how you design your regression model, how to incorporate those factors. But usually, for your situation, I think we should use a simulation tool rather than a statistical tool, because for the statistical tool, you must have the data to do modeling, but the data may not be available before. So for such a case, it's better to do simulation using WRF or current fluid dynamics, I guess, in your case.
So, but then would that be a condition that the policy change must be able to be quantified by the analyst? Otherwise, how do you sort of simulate the changes in the policy and its impact on the prediction?
Yes, it's a good question. I think it's still doable, but require a very careful design of the modeling process. Probably you can intentionally reduce some industrial land use and to see their effects. So if you in your historical data, you can incorporate like those chemical industries in the land use data. Then probably you can get the effect for the historical data. Then you will be able to simulate its future effect.
Right.
Yeah, it requires very careful design.
Of course,
Still,
yes.
still doable.
Yeah, still doable. Yes, true.
Mm.
There are further questions here. Two more questions.
Would you also use the beta in the GTWR model to explain certain events? Yeah, that's for sure. Usually we explain the model in terms of the coefficient values.
Mm.
And usually we aggregate the coefficient value in terms of the different regions. Then we can see the averaged effect in terms of the coefficient value. But for explaining certain events, maybe the question is similar to the last question. Let me see. For certain
I guess
event.
I just
I guess that's whether your model can capture such event before. If it can capture, of course, then it can explain the future events. Again, it requires the careful design of the model.
Yes.
And the incorporation of the data in the model.
Right.
I recall that my students tried to do that, but I forgot the result about this.
While we are waiting for further questions, maybe let me raise another pragmatic question. In order to be able to make use of the scientific data or prediction and all that you and your team produces for other similar or results from similar scientists, what do you think would the planning authority or planning institutions, how can they prepare themselves in order to be able to make use of your research outcomes?
Yeah, it's a very good question. To make the planners officials accept method, model, and results, I guess it's a big challenge. And it requires not just the technical skills, but also the skills of, negotiation, promotion, etc. But within our control, we should produce technically good results and try to convince them. That's probably what we can do. Because it's data-driven, evidence-based, we can provide more evidence to those officials to convince them.
Yes. But there need to be a strong team, I suppose, of data scientists or urban analytic experts, in the planning department. So in fact, that relates to our planning education as well.
Yes.
How do we prepare planners for the future who are able to comprehend what specialists could produce, which could be very useful for our planning. But the people in the planning organizations, they need to be able to understand and apply that in their daily work.
Yes. Yeah. Then, on the one hand, we should produce a good result. On the other hand, we should explain the result well to those laymen. Probably. Not familiar with analytics.
Yes.
We can provide them better visual results.
Yes.
To show to them.
So it's research and education together.
Yes.
We being sort of working in the universities.
Yes.
So we cannot just do one and not the other.
Right. Yes.
Right. So there's one clarification, I think, from John Yuan Fan.
Another question.
Yeah, I think there's clarification here, right?
Yeah. Varies according to time and
Okay.
space at a very fine grain. So just curious. Data is sorry.
Okay, now there's one from Frankie Choi.
Yeah. More confidential satellite information not open to public. As far as you know, do you think the government has already conducted in-house research to project the country and the city's changes, in particular, to prior the execution of major? Do you think the government has already conducted in-house research? I mean, for this, I don't know, such as local migration, new development like Xiong'an. Maybe they did that, but I'm not sure about it. It's not a technical question.
Yeah, maybe a quick question to wind up the seminar. From your research, do you find any major differences between compact high-rise cities and sprawling low-density cities in terms of the results, or in terms of the application of your models to study similar social, spatial, temporal, and environmental issues?
Yeah, clearly they are different, and the objectives and the factors considered should be different. Once we did some analysis on the three-dimensional urban density, something like that. But then we need to account for the height of building, the volume of building. Then the analysis is more complex.
Yes.
But it still can be done.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. Right. Well, I think it is at this time that we should wind up the seminar. So thank you very much again, Professor Hang, for a very informative, stimulating, informative and very rich presentation. And that really hit some of the key issues in our spatial planning, in the developing or planning for sustainable societies. So thank you very much, Professor Hang.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And thank you all for attending the seminar. So I hope you will continue to support our seminar activities. And in fact, tomorrow, 9 o'clock, we'll have another seminar, which is on another theme of our seminars series, which is Urban China Studies. And that will take a very different approach. It will be qualitative. It's about migration, given by Professor Cindy Fang from the University of California, Berkeley, I think. Yes, so 9 o'clock. So I hope to see you there then. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Professor Hang.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So stay in touch. Bye.
Sure. Bye.
Bye.